everybody. I don't know if you know me, you probably remember me. I came to talk for Mr. Pasovich back in January. My name's Emery Kronemeyer. I go to West Virginia University. I had Mr. Pasovich as a teacher for his anatomy courses, his Project Lead the Way courses, and for AP Bio. And I was told you guys had a lot of questions about, oh man, now I have classes from home, or how am I supposed to do this crazy final project? Like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it all. And Mr. Pastor just had me upload this video for you guys so that you guys can be able to just kind of see what my group did last year, kind of see an example, so that you guys can kind of get a sense for, this was a project that got, I believe, a 98% for the final grade. So this is something that you guys can look at to kind of see how maybe you want to shape yours. I did this project with 2 other people. I'm sure Mr. Hastridge told me that he has linked you guys kind of our video, and we all kind of split it up into thirds. We all worked together on the final presentation. I kind of took it upon myself. I asked them what they wanted in the video, but we were having a hard time meeting up. So I made the video, I filmed it myself, I edited it myself, and put it in here. I sent them the link, made sure everything was okay if we needed to change anything, since we couldn't physically get together to do it, and everyone was super busy. So I'm just kind of gonna go through mine. Hopefully this helps you guys out. If you have any questions, I'll gladly feel free to answer any of them. You can just leave them in the comments below, or you can always email Mr. Pasovich if you have any additional questions. He says that he's going to be looking over this video too. Alright, so let's get started. So this is our presentation. Now, the way that the presentation will work, and I'm sorry if any of this is redundant, but I'm going to try to elaborate as much as I can on this final project for you guys. So the way that the final project worked was, we all, first of all, make sure that you are dressed nice. That is number one. This is a professional presentation, and so you need to make sure that you're either wearing either like dress pants or like a dress shirt. You can go tie, you can go blazer, just make sure that it's like you can go dress. Just make sure that you're not showing up in sweats and a hoodie, or, ripped skinny jeans. No ripped jeans. If you're gonna wear jeans, they cannot be ripped. Just make sure that you're wearing proper attire. Another thing is good to have is that during this presentation, you'll see is that we didn't put full sentences, really, on the PowerPoint. And that's because we had index cards with all of our information on it that we were going to say. That way you want to make sure that you don't really want to look at what's behind you. The stuff that's behind you is more for the person you're presenting to. For us, it was Mr. Castellucci before he became superintendent. And Mr. Castellucci sat there, and I'm sure Mr. Pastors just said this, but you want to make sure that the language you're using is, you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, but you don't want to throw all of these vocab words at Mr. Castellucci. And so the way, instead of saying, for example, later on, and you'll see, instead of me saying things like, because of, now, Anna Garcia's conditions may be different, but I'm sure they're at least somewhat similar. Because of Anna Garcia's sickle cell anemia, her blood became very viscous, her blood began to cauterize on itself and get caught on the vessels around it, and causing her to get many blood clots. Now, I'm sure many of you know what I just said, but if you were to go to someone else just in the hallway, they wouldn't have understand half of what I just said. Or maybe they would, but maybe they would get caught up on, okay, maybe I haven't heard that word in a while, or hold on, slow down, like I need to be able to process what's going on. And so you want to be able to, you're going to feel like you're reiterating a lot of things. You're going to feel like you're repeating yourself. You're going to feel like you're over-explaining. But that's how you know you're doing well. So a good way to do that is to think of analogies to explain things to people who aren't as familiar with the human body as y'all are. So the way I explained it to Mr. Castellucci was maple syrup. I said, so because Anna's sickle cell anemia, I used a lot of food analogies. But because Anna's sickle cell anemia, kind of banana-shaped, sickle, sharp, hook-like blood cells, and we had a picture behind us, you want to try not to look behind you. That stuff is for whoever you're presenting to, not really for you. You should have all your information in front of you so you don't really have to look at the screen, besides of, okay, this is just a quick glance, like, okay, this is what I'm talking about, here I go. So the blood cells, which are sickle-shaped, kind of like bananas, but with really, really pointy ends, they get caught on the sides, on the inside of the bloodstream. Now, when they get caught like this, it starts to clump up, and your blood normally flows well, right? But the more links and caught-ups we get with those sickle cells, the more viscous we get, and by viscous I mean kind of getting thick, like maple syrup. And once I made that analogy, I started using maple syrup-like blood and viscous interchangeably. That way, it was made clear that they're synonymous with each other. Alright, so those are just a few tips for your presentation. If I think of any more, I'll add them in. This is just an example of our presentation. We have just a little GIF in the beginning. We have a catchy title to get people's attention. I'm not sure if the requirements are the same for you guys. I'm assuming so. So we're going to get right into it. So we had to pick how we thought Anna died. And when doing that, we have to add a video of sorts to basically, from like a scientific source, to show like, oh, this is what we're talking about, this is explaining it, and things like that. We thought that Anna died from hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen in the body, which ultimately causes necrosis and brain death. Now, we have this little video here. It was uploaded to my YouTube channel. You can use another video of sorts if you can find one within the time restraint. For us, we needed to find, the requirement for our video was to find a scientific video briefly is the key word, explaining what's happening from a scientific source. Well, we couldn't find any videos on hypoxia that weren't more than 7 minutes, but we needed to have the video between 1 to 3 minutes. So, a hint for that is to go into a video editor and edit on your own. I'll show you an example. So, this here was the video file for the short video that I edited down. And so there are, if you type into Google, YouTube to MP4, not MP3, MP3 is the music, just the sound. MP4 will give you sound and video. If you type YouTube to MP4 converter, you'll get a bunch of different websites for you to be able to download these videos from. And all you have to do is go to the YouTube video of which you want to use, and all you have to do is copy the URL, copy it into the generator. The generator will give you a downloadable file, and that will allow you to use the file in whatever editing software you're using. I'm using iMovie. Personally, I prefer Adobe, but to each their own. I just used iMovie here because it was really quick and easy. Adobe is if you want to add a lot more effects, things like that, a lot more cuts and angles and shifts and things like that. iMovie is free, Adobe is not. Do with that what you will. So for this little video, it was like basically one of these like scientific compilations, like where it's like it'll give you some text, a little video to watch, and then it'll cut to the next one. It's almost like a moving PowerPoint in a sense. And so, it's basically going through and going from each step to the next. It's explaining the process of how hypoxia takes place. And there was this huge segment in the middle where the scientists would speak. And they had some useful information, but it made it way too long. The necessary information that we needed was both at the beginning and end of the scientist interview. So what I decided to do was to download the video, like I said, put it into iMovie, and I cut out the scientist part, and I cut out all the pieces that we needed so that it could be in between the minute and 3-minute range, but still conveying all of the information that we needed. So you can see, like right here, it was pretty easy for me to cut because of it being like a video, a cut, a video, a cut. It was like the actual style of the video itself. I find these really easy to use. There's a lot of them online, probably for whatever disease or whatever that you're trying to say that she died of, the condition that she died of. This hypoxia video, if you think, and in your case with the symptoms that Anna has, because I'm pretty sure they change from year to year, if you still think that Anna died of hypoxia, this cut version is on my YouTube channel, so you can use that, the same place where I'm posting this. So you can download this hypoxia video if you want to use it. But just went through, made a little cut, went on with the rest of it. So obviously on these types of slides, we talked a lot more about the actual conditions than what was on the slide. And so another thing that you probably have to include is how to investigate a crime scene. Yes, we all know this information as it was probably the first unit that you actually went over in this class. However, a lot of people don't. So you want to make sure that the whole purpose of this project is to convince them you know what you're talking about, this is how she died, and this is why we're right. So the way you do that is showing you know how to do these processes that we're talking about. That's the whole purpose of this class, is to just show what you know. So with the crime scene investigation, we have our list of steps for being able to actually gather the evidence from a crime scene, as well as the specific. A good thing to add in here is terms. You can always explain a term. If there's a term that's a vocab term for this class, say for example I were reading number 5 on the crime scene investigation list as part of my presentation. You want to explain it, because just assuming that not everybody knows what that is. Because, your classmate might know what it is, but Mr. Castellucci probably doesn't know what it is. So I wouldn't say toxicologists perform tests on samples. I would say toxicologists who are scientists who specifically study the components of different types of substances at a crime scene. They're going to perform tests on the samples that we collected from the crime scene. So they would perform tests on things like the vomit, any medications that were found at the scene, the blood, any other body fluids we found. They are the reason that we're able to identify things of what they are in a crime scene. As you'll see in the next slide, there is a needle on the ground. You don't want to just go picking up any needle at a crime scene, you want to know what's inside it. Things like that. Yes, that was lengthy, but that's what you need to do for this presentation. That's why you have so long to present. If we were going with quick, simple, everybody knows this information, bam, 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 your presentation would only take about 5-10 minutes. However, you have that elongated time because Mr. Pasovich and this curriculum wants you to go in depth and show what you know. Another important things to include is pictures from throughout the year. So, I'm assuming you guys took pictures of your crime scene. That's very important. We didn't pinpoint all of the evidence in the crime scene. We picked which ones were important to what we were trying to prove for Anna's death. And so, things that we pointed out were, we made sure that they pointed out in the PowerPoint with like little animatics. So we have our key on the side, we have circles, we have numbers, like the little placards that you put down. That's a good thing to add. And we went through all of the different evidence at the crime scene to make sure that it was clear to everyone, this is what we saw, this is what's going down, now you know, so we can reference it later when we talk about it. Another thing that's kind of a key element that we did not see before in the original crime scene. This is why it was important to take pictures, because you can go back and look at the photos. At the beginning of the year, number 8, nobody realized number 8 was there. They just thought, oh yeah, the girl's name, who's Anna, was Brenna, and I was friends with Brenna. And the only way I found out was because I was like, Brenna, when did you paint your nails? And she's like, oh, you know, wasn't allowed to tell us what was actually going on. And so Mr. Passovich had to give everyone a lot of hints to find that information. So just, if you guys have similar information, make sure you're looking for the nitty-gritty details, like Anna's fingernails being blue, because that's evidence of oxygen not getting to those parts of the body, and that's really important when making a diagnosis. Alright, so obviously Anna has the odds stacked against her in this case. It's pretty obvious that she was not making proper choices before her death either, if you look at things like everywhere on your Project Lead the Way site. If you look at her food journals, if you look at her autopsy, if you look at just, you want to take a little bit from everywhere, put it together, and make this project. So for the next 2 slides, we have basically, these are the things that we think that killed her. Yes, these things may have contributed to her death, but we don't think they really affected the main cause of her death. So for us, that was hypoxia. So hypoxia is going to happen because of a blood clot, typically near the neck or the brain, that cuts off oxygen from getting to the brain. So with her type 1 diabetes, that means that there's issues with her endocrine system that are going to affect her blood. This means that she's going to have an excess amount of sugar in her blood, making it very viscous, maple syrup-like. That's another thing I added to Mr. Castellucci, was a lot of sugar, like maple syrup. It's super thick. And so Anna having this very thick blood means that we have to name all of the diseases that go with it. So we have all of the diseases that may have contributed to her blood, or basically being able to get oxygen to the rest of the parts of the body. If you have type 1 diabetes, your blood is thick from all the excess sugar. Sickle cell anemia, your blood cells are misshapen. Hypercholesterolemia, you've got stuff gumming up your pipes. Urinary tract infection, you're going to have an excess amount of white blood cells in your bloodstream. Heart disease, heart pumps the blood. Stroke, if you have a stroke, then your brain is not functioning properly, even though it's not already getting oxygen already. And spleen rupture, if your blood is going somewhere else and you don't have a closed system, oxygen is not as much oxygen is going to get to where you need it to be. Diseases that didn't contribute as much, like I said before, these were the diseases like, yeah, she had them, but maybe they didn't contribute as much. The hypercholesterolemia and the heart disease were focusing more on lack of oxygen to the brain. If she did have something wrong with her heart, like if she had a misshapen valve or something like that, it's not going to be contributing as much, as long with the hypercholesterolemia. Hypercholesterolemia was something that we did a gel electrophoresis test for in her family. She, if I remember correctly, she was heterozygous for the trait, which means that she did not have the homozygous, I believe it was either dominant or recessive, but she did not have the homozygous for that trait, which means that she has a mild version of it, which means it could have affected her more, but it's not as bad as everything else. So in here, we are taking the big topics of each disease, kind of like how I just did in like a summary form, and we're going to go down the list and we're going to dissect each disease that she has, like we did with the units in class. And so we're going to be going down the list, we're going to be going down and explaining everything for each one. If you use a picture, make sure you use the proper citation, because that's important. If it does not belong to you, if the information is not yours, you must cite it. That is something that I know Mr. Pasovich was a stickler for all of class. Some way that you can work around using citations, because I know citations can be hard, because, oh, what if, I don't even, I use a citation, but I didn't do it right. Then something I did for a lot of class was if I had an assignment where I needed to use photos, I drew them myself, took a picture, and then put it in. That's one way to get away your citations, because then it is your own photo, it belongs to you, you created it, therefore you do not need a citation. So all of these are, look, picture, citation, list, not actually going into each one because you're going to show what you know, not what you can put on a PowerPoint slide. Going to be going through each one. We're going through. We get into all the different stuff that Anna had, what they may cause. Alright, so this slide I think is very important, and this is the slide that I think we spent the most time explaining, because it is the relationship between the diseases. Each one of these diseases does their own damage on their own, but until you start stacking up those Jenga blocks is when it's going to start toppling over. So you need to be able to show the connection between all this stuff piling up to show how severe it was and how it could actually cause her death rather than just a hospital visit. More evidence to include things that we decided that she was doing that necessarily wasn't something you could diagnose, but something that worsened the situation. For example, Anna's bad eating habits. I don't know if you guys have access to this, but this was a piece of evidence that we had. Maybe you guys have a food journal, maybe you have something different. But what we had, because Anna was a type 1 diabetic, she had to keep a food journal. And something that we made note of was the amount of sugar that she was consuming before she died. So she had a 12-ounce can of Sprite, apple juice, she had blueberries. Now you would think blueberries would be healthy, but blueberries are a fruit, so they're very, very high in sugar. So we're showing them where Anna went wrong. And if you look at dessert, the night before she died, a type 1 diabetic decided to have a cup of ice cream with marshmallows and Oreos. So obviously that's going to cause an excess amount of sugar in her blood. Also, whole milk has a whole lot of sugar. Whole lot of sugar. And other things that we decided worsened the situation. We were looking at her toxicology report, that person you guys know who analyzes all the stuff found at the scene, including the autopsy, the things that are in the blood. So in her blood, there was no evidence of alcohol. However, it's been known that Anna drank, I believe, 3 cups of wine a day, and wine has a very high amount of sugar in it. So the fact that her body didn't have any traces of alcohol showed things that may have worsened the situation. So if there's no evidence of alcohol in her body, we kind of concluded that she wasn't taking her medication. Because of the ACE inhibitors and the statins that were found in her bloodstream as well, there was no evidence of the drug in the blood. So then this is another key component of your presentation, and that is the timeline for Anna's death. So we basically planned out what we thought Anna was going to, basically day by day. If we look back at the police reports, the autopsy, if we look at her diseases, basically what we think happened in what order. And so we kind of went through, made sure that everything was okay with the whole group before deciding. Before making the video, this is a good thing to make, the timeline. That way you know what scenes you need to film for your video. And so, if you want to watch me die, the link to the video is right there. It's also on this YouTube channel. I'm sure you can find it. There's not many videos on here. They're all school projects. And yeah, so there's that. I believe that video needed to be 3 to 7 minutes long. If you have any questions on actually making the video, I'll be glad to answer them. Again, go ahead in the comments below. I'll be glad to answer them. Last thing is your sources used. If you do not put your sources with your pictures, which you should be doing anyway, or if you got your information from an outside source, you need to put it in the source used. For us, we got all of our information besides, we linked the videos that we used, which were made by us. So we didn't have to source them. But all of our information we got was from Project Lead the Way site, from autopsy reports, medical history, documents, food journals, things like that. And that is this entire project in a nutshell. I don't think that I am missing anything. If I am, please let me know in the comments below. And I wish you all the best of luck with your projects. If you need any help of any kind, feel free to contact me. Yeah, and I can't wait to see your videos. Feel free to send them to me. Alright, bye guys.